To begin running a locomotive with our DT400 or DT402 throttle, the first thing we want to do is to plug the throttle into a good LocoNet port, such as the UP5 panel. You hold the plug right behind the cable, right behind the plug with the tab up, and you push it in until you hear it click. Let me do that one more time. You hold the cable right behind the plug with the tab up, press it into the LocoNet port, shove it in until you hear it click. The next thing we're going to do is turn track power on by pressing the power key, getting plus on, minus off in the display, quickly pressing the Y plus key. You now see that we have the track status indicator dot above the word off. And that dot is on solid and not blinking. If it happens to be blinking, you can simply toggle by quickly pressing the Y plus key, and it will toggle from blinking to solid, and you'll be able to run trains. We now have track status and we're ready to go. The next thing we would do would be to select our locomotive. First, you determine which side or throttle you want to run the locomotive on. If you want to run it on the left-hand side, turn the throttle knob on the left-hand side counterclockwise, maybe a quarter of a turn. You then press the loco key, and you will see flashing at the bottom of the screen on the left-hand side. You're now ready to select your locomotive number or address. If we want to select locomotive 602, we would now press 602, and then we can either press enter or loco. We now have 602 on solid and the bottom of the screen on the left-hand side, and we are ready to run locomotive 602 on the left-hand throttle. To run the locomotive, simply turn the left throttle knob, and you will see both a bar graph moving across as well as the numbers increasing or decreasing as you turn the throttle. If you want to reverse your locomotive, you can do so with the reversing key at the bottom on either side, depending on whether you're using the right or the left throttle. In this case, we press the left reversing key, and you will see the arrow changing direction, either pointing to the rear of the locomotive or the front of the locomotive. With DCC, it doesn't matter which direction the locomotive is facing on the track. If you tell it to go forward, it's going to go forward. So if that arrow is facing the front of the locomotive on your display, your locomotive should go forward. You can also use the throttle knob to reverse your locomotive. All you do is double click or push down twice on the locomotive, on the throttle knob on the locomotive side that you're running, and it will change direction. You can also, at the same time you're running the locomotive on your left throttle, select another locomotive on the right throttle. Simply turn the right throttle counterclockwise, press loco, and then put the new number in. In this case, we're going to use this Pennsylvania locomotive that has address number 8857. We will then press in 8857 and enter. We could also press the loco key. You notice that this locomotive has sound. To make this locomotive run, the arrow is facing the front of the locomotive on the throttle, therefore the locomotive will go forward, in this case to our left. As we increase the throttle, the locomotive begins to run. Turn the throttle knob counterclockwise and the locomotive stops. To activate the various sound functions on this particular locomotive, we can use the keyboard on the throttle. The bell is activated by the number 1 key. You have a help in that you have a small bell also right by that key. To stop the bell, press the number 1 key again. To blow the horn on this locomotive, we would depress the number 2 key. Notice that the horn only blew when I had the key depressed. That's because the number 2 key on Digitrax throttles is non-latching, unlike the other keys which are latching. Also, we have other sounds such as coupler clank. In this case, on this particular sound decoder, it's number 3. We press the number 3 key. See, each time I press it, you hear a coupler clank. If I get tired of the sound or don't want the sound for whatever reason, I can use the 8 key, which is the mute key. Notice that the sound is now muted. I can bring the sound back by pressing the 8 key a second time. Press the 8 key, activate the mute, and the sound goes away. One nice thing about Digitrax throttles is that when you activate the various function keys, you can look at the top of the display and you can see whether that particular function is activated or not. In this case, you look at the top of the display when we've got 8857 activated, and you will see that number 8 is, in fact, showing at the top of the display, meaning it's activated. If I press the 8 key again, the number goes away. It's no longer muted. We want to ring the bell again. I press the 1 key. You see number 1 activated at the top of the display, telling you function 1 is active. Press the 1 key a second time. The number 1 goes away, and it's no longer active. If I want to now dispatch this locomotive from this throttle, I simply zero my speed, press the loco key, get the number, in this case 8857 flashing, and I can press the dispatch key or the DISP key, and that locomotive is no longer active on this throttle. It's gone. I can turn it and nothing happens. Also note that we still have sound active on this particular locomotive even though it is no longer selected. That is because some sound decoders do not turn the sound off once you've activated them, even after you've dispatched that locomotive from the throttle.